wanting to experience more, and knowing that we're not meant to do this alone.
Welcome everyone to episode 15 of Chronicles of the High-Powered Female CEO. And today I have with me the lovely Margy. Margy, welcome.
Melisa, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So tell us about who you are and what you've accomplished. How do people typically know you?
Yes. So I am the CEO and co-owner of Interview Connections. We are a multi-seven-figure podcast booking agency and coaching company. So that is like my primary focus and what people know about me. I also host an award-winning podcast called We Get It, Your Dad Died, where I talk to high-achieving entrepreneurs about grief and loss. And actually, my episode featuring you is launching in a few days, which I'm so excited to share with the world. So that's who I am professionally. And actually, Interview Connections, we just won a Bronze Stevie Award. We just found out, which is really exciting because it's for marketing agencies. So it's not just for our niche of podcast booking, it's among all agencies. There were some really, really big fish in that category. So to get any recognition in that category was really, really exciting. So I'll brag a little bit about that because I'm very
excited. Girl.
Yeah.
That is so amazing. And I'll be the first to say I'm also a client of Interview Connections. It's been a beautiful experience of not having to stress and do all the it feels like going into the jungle to try to figure out, what podcast to get on and everything. And they do all that work for you. It's so beautiful. So I love what you guys are creating. I also love, and you didn't mention this, but I think it'd be fun to just talk briefly about the recent switches you've made in your company because of my emphasis on leadership through feminine energy, and that we're just lacking that so much in the recent switches you've made. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes. So this is like my obsession right now that I'm talking about everywhere. I mean, leadership has always been a passion for me, but in the past 6 months, I've totally changed my approach to growing Interview Connections, and it has been such an incredible journey. So, like on the surface, what that's looked like is we've become a fully agile company. So, I read a book about Scrum and was like, oh my gosh, like this is the future of work. We have to do this. Any company that doesn't do this is crazy, because I truly believe this is where work is going. These are the environments team members are going to want to work in, and they just will not work in companies that aren't working in an agile way. So did this huge changeover, found a great consultant, and through Scrum and Agile, it's been this incredible process of relinquishing control and letting go of micromanagement and not managing anymore, but really just leading and coaching teams and empowering them to innovate, to solve problems, to work autonomously, which has been so cool and scary. And it's really led me down this path of like, why are so many leaders so diminishing? I think a lot of the people who are not great leaders, who do things that hurt their employees, who don't create psychological safety, who are controlling or micromanaging, the majority of those people are really good people with all the best intentions. And that's what I think is so interesting about leadership, is so many of the things that we do that are not good, that are harming our teams and ultimately harming our results, are a result of fear and of the nervous system. And I've been doing panels with Elizabeth Kristoff, one of our clients who's an expert in the nervous system, and Brandy Olson, our consultant, about leadership in the nervous system. And we just did one about creating psychological safety within your team. And how do you do that in a group? And how do you do that individually within yourself? And so this has really, I actually just wrote an article about this that I'm publishing in a few days, about how I've shifted my focus in such a big way from just like fast growth, which is kind of a masculine thing of like focusing on the bottom line and the numbers and all that. And that's still a big part of me. Like, I'm not saying I'm a different person. I love fast growth. I love numbers. I love money. I love the bottom line. But I've shifted so much to focusing, instead of on growth, having my primary focus be healing and less personal healing, although that has to happen too. And for me, that's been happening for many years, but really healing the company. And the reason I love business is, yes, I love the strategy and I love the leadership and I love the personal growth opportunities that are absolutely required to keep being in business. But I've always felt this kind of weird connection with the company. Like I can feel the health of the business inside me. Like I can feel when things are going really well, and I can feel when we're getting to a place that's getting dangerous, like we're getting to the edge of a cliff. I can just feel it. And it feels so different in my body when the business is healthy versus unhealthy. And when I say unhealthy, it's still a really successful business, right? Like it's not like it's this, burning dumpster fire or anything. But there were many things in my focus to build momentum and to scale and to improve client experience and focusing on that,
Yeah.
where there was other stuff that I just kind of let go, right? There was stuff It was stuff I didn't feel I had the answers to, right? So some of the key roles in the company were very repetitive. So we had these really smart, creative people who were experiencing burnout in part because they were doing these really repetitive roles that weren't challenging them. They weren't requiring creativity.
Mhm.
There was a lot of stuff like that that felt very fundamental to the company. So I was like, I don't really know how to fix this. And then also as you grow, your small problems get bigger. So I really hadn't focused enough on culture and creating psychological safety and looking at how we structure work to make it more engaging and exciting. And by going back in the last 6 months, and instead of focusing on grow, focusing on how do we heal? How do we heal the fabric of this culture? How do we create more trust? How do we create more joy? It's been so cool. It feels so good and aligned in my body. And the irony of when you start focusing on healing over growth is we're growing and we're growing in a more sustainable way than I think we ever have.
Wow, that is so beautiful. I think that you're pioneering something that many people have not caught on board with yet. And I loved what you said about up and coming times in society. I can feel that even not, having a huge team or whatever, right? Being in the middle of the pulse of that, I can feel that things are shifting and changing. And I think that it's wise of us to heed that call now rather than waiting until we're backed into a corner to go, oh, there has to be a better way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's not just bad for your results as a company. It's really, I think most of us are like people with empathy, and I think some of us, and this is something that you talk about that I really love, some of us, especially women in power, I think we feel like we have to quiet that feminine, that empathetic side of ourselves in the service of setting boundaries and being assertive and growing and dominating and all that stuff. And I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think there's a lot of nuance to it. But there was something that felt off. And when you avoid things, when you know something's out of alignment slightly, but you keep pushing through, stuff's going to happen. Like for me, I was exhausted all the time and I was starting to get like the Sunday scaries, which is concerning because I own the business, right? Like, so why do I have the Sunday scaries of like an employee in a job I don't like when I created this job, right? So there was those. I think if you feel like you're spinning your wheels and you're not, even though you're working more and more, you're getting diminishing returns, and so is your team on the amount of work and effort, or you're feeling exhausted, or you just, and this is what it is for me, it's very subtle. It's like a vague uneasiness. It's not like you feel terrible, right? You're still thriving in a lot of areas, but there's just this something's not quite clicked into place where it needs to be. And that's really what it felt like for me. And this just feels so right, this approach.
that's so cool. So I want to shift gears now, Margy, and ask you a bit more about, because really the intention of this is to hear about your heart. And I love, like, I've seen weaves of that because it's clear to me as you talk about your business that your heart is right in the middle of it, which is so cool. But tell us a little bit more about your personal journey to this point in your life.
Yeah. So it's interesting that I have such a connection with the business because I didn't found this business. Like this podcast booking was not my idea. It's not like my dream. It wasn't like my passion. And I think a lot of people think like I need to have a business and something I'm really passionate about. And I think that's great. And I think there are seasons for that. And if you have that, that's amazing. But I also think there's a lot of meaning to be found in a business that, yeah, it wasn't like, this is my dream. My dream would probably be like animal rescue, which would be very high burnout and I would end up with 100 dogs. So I don't want to do it. But like finding myself in the act of growing a business, the act of nurturing a team and caring for clients and amplifying their message and their voices, I've really developed a passion for that. So what my journey looked like is, first of all, my business partner, Jess. So Jess, previous guest on the show, founded Interview Connections. We worked together as door-to-door canvassers briefly when I had first graduated from college. And it was less than a year that we worked together, but she was the canvas director for that office. I became a field manager. And then I moved a lot. I moved to Asia for 2 years to teach English because I love to travel.
Wow.
And Jess and I reconnected because my dad died suddenly by suicide while I was living in Taiwan. And I was in a really desperate position because my mom went and stayed with her friend, but there was like all these pets in the house. And like they were being fed. Like my mom was going every day to take care of them, but it was not a good situation. So I posted on Facebook, like, which is a desperate thing to do, to ask people who are basically strangers, like, can you come pick up some of these animals and like take care of them for a month until I can get back to the country because my dad just killed himself. It was like a very vulnerable moment all around. And Jess was somebody who I was connected with on Facebook and was like, oh, I'll come pick up a cat. And this was really nice because we really didn't know each other. Like we were colleagues. We had worked together very briefly, right? It wasn't this like, we weren't like close friends or anything. So I was like, wow, that's really nice. Okay. So she did pick this cat up. She still has this cat. That was my dad's cat. And so much of our relationship was founded on this cat because it took us from colleagues to people with very high trust because I was in such a vulnerable situation that it created a lot of trust really quickly that she was there for me in this really vulnerable situation and taking care of this wonderful cat who I love so much. And so when I moved back from Taiwan, Jess had kitten, and I worked some sales jobs. First, I cleaned out my parents' hoarded house, which is like a whole thing. And then I moved to Colorado. I got a sales job selling jewelry and I hated it. And I saw Jess post that her company was hiring for contractors, like remote booking agents, part-time positions. And I had just learned about remote work. And I was like so into it because I just wanted to work from home with my cats in my sweatpants. That was like my goal. I also wanted to be a business owner really badly. So on the side, I was building this MLM business in the fitness industry and realizing I really didn't enjoy that model, but I wanted to be a business owner. I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. So I'm like grinding it out, trying to build this business. And I'm like, great, I can work from home part-time as a contractor for Jess's company, build my fitness business. It's going to be golden and I'm going to be a millionaire. So I start working for Jess part-time as a booking agent, $15 an hour contractor position, no benefits. And I really did not know how I was going to live on that, but I was like, I'll figure it out. And very quickly grew to love entrepreneurship. So I'd already like dipped my toe in it with the MLM business and researching other business owners in that space. But through getting to know my clients and listening to their interviews, I started to learn about businesses in all these other spaces, right? Like finance people and agency owners and all these different things. And seeing how they were creating these impactful lives on their own terms with all this freedom, I was like, this is like what I'm meant to do. Still thinking that my path was through this MLM business, which talk about being out of alignment. It was like I like dreaded it every day, but I was like, but I wanted to be a business owner, and I was like, this is all I've got, right? Because I don't know how to start a business. I don't have another service to offer, so I just got to make this work. Ironic. So I
Yeah.
end up moving. My relationship ends. I moved from Colorado back home to Rhode Island, which is where Jess lives. And she asked me to become the first employee of Interview Connections in 2017. So I cried on the phone to my best friend because I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to own a business, but I could feel that it was the next step. So I said yes. And from there, we started hiring all full-time employees. So I was in charge of this changeover from contractors to full-time employees, which was a very steep learning curve. But it was great. And Jess and I were partners in many ways at that time, even though I was an employee. And then at the end of 2017, I asked for 50% equity and I got it. And I became 50% owner at the beginning of 2018.
That is such an incredible story. I'm like, wow. And it makes a lot of sense too, your intuition with being in alignment, because you experienced this period of time of pursuing this, building this business, this like brainchild of yours that actually felt so out of alignment. I think that matters so much because I see so many budding business owners who struggle and like they don't hit the mark yet, and they haven't hit the mark yet, and so many just give up, right? And just go back to the job, even though it also feels like death. So just your story is so cool.
Yeah. And I like the MLM piece of it because it's like, I feel like we ask for these miracles. And I was doing a lot of manifestation stuff. And I remember listening to Abraham Hicks and being like, they were asking someone, do you want to start a business from scratch or do you want to jump into something that already has momentum? And I said aloud, something that already has momentum in 2016, not knowing I would become 50% owner of an already 6-figure business in 2018 and then scale it to 7 and beyond. It was just wild. But I was so sure that my only option was this MLM business that I hated. And I think that is so important because at the time when things aren't working out and you feel like it's your only chance, like you have to make it work, like there's something better for you out there. And I just want to impress that upon everybody. Like it feels like there's this one path that's the path to your dream. But I think being open to there's a lot of paths to your dream and you may not actually know it yet is really important. It reminds me of one of my favorite stories is about Walt Disney. And he created this rabbit. I think his name was Oswald. And it was like his thing. And he loved Oswald. He ended up losing Oswald because he misread a contract. And he signed away the rights to Oswald and lost him. And on the train home, he drew Mickey Mouse. So like, I love that story because I think so often we get so attached to things and we're so afraid they're not going to work out. But like that thing could be your Oswald. Like you haven't even found your Mickey yet.
That is I've never heard that story before. What a cool story. So when you think about like what stepping into this business and recognizing the potential there, like I can ask for 50% and I am worthy of that. And, all of that, what that asked you to sacrifice. It sounds like this dream that you thought was your dream, right? Of the MLM. What was that like for you finally putting that to rest?
Oh, it was so good. I really I clung to that for longer than I should have because I thought this is my ticket into entrepreneurship. So my parents are both lawyers. I don't have my dad was in private practice, so he was kind of an entrepreneur, but I really didn't have any business owners around me, especially online business owners. And the online business world, once you're in it, it's huge and there's all these opportunities. But the majority of people are outside that world and don't even know it exists. So they're like, what? You can work from your computer and make millions of dollars? That's a scam. But it's real. People are doing it. But I didn't know anything about this world. And so I was really attached to the MLM because I wanted to be an online business owner, and I didn't even really know what that meant. The only version of that I was familiar with was these MLM people, and then I just kept getting targeted with more of their ads. So I was like seeing them, and I'm like, wow, they look relaxed working from bed with their smoothie at 10 a.m. Like, I want that. And
Yeah.
so it was actually really exciting because once I realized that I could own a business that I actually loved, and like I was like, I can really do something here. Like I came in with a lot of vision for what the company could be, and like a plan of like, here's step by step how to get there. And it
Mhm.
was just really exciting. It was great to let the MLM go because it was like I had this, I didn't need it anymore. I had this option that I actually loved and was passionate about, that didn't feel in alignment, that I was really excited about doing every day. And so it felt very good to like cancel that. Although I did call my upline coach and apologize because she was very nice.
I love it. I love it. And then I can't help but thinking about the fact that you lost your dad, and and then how this like kind of plunged you into this journey on your own of without your father. How has that been for you? Like, how have you found such inner strength having gone through that?
Yeah, I'm stronger now than I was before it happened, honestly. I think that like grief and loss is really powerful. And I think that there's a lot of beauty and power and gifts and transformation available to us through loss if we're like open and available for them. And so I actually feel like I'm a much stronger person now. And I mean, I had the strength then, but if you have the strength and you don't know it, essentially it's not super valuable. So it's like, even though I had that in me, I really didn't feel strong. I really didn't feel powerful. I had a terrible attitude. I really just like everything in life, felt like kind of like one bad thing after another. I had kind of a victim-y mentality, even though I wasn't conscious of it at the time, like under that label. And so losing my dad really, it just shifted everything for me. And it also forced me to like take responsibility for the first time in my entire life. Cause it
Mhm.
was like, there was this situation after my dad died of like taking care of my mom and taking care of these pets and cleaning out this house. And there was no one to do it but me. And so for the first time in my life, I really just like took something on instead of wishing someone else would do it or someone else would change it. I took it on and did it myself and was really shocked by my own power and capability at doing that. And it's only because of that that I was able to come in as a first employee so powerfully, and that I would be able to ask for equity and get it like that. Like because after that, after cleaning the house, after dealing with that trauma and that grief, I was so unfazed by the constant chaos and growing pains of a startup. Like I was just like, whatever, we'll figure it out. Like I just I just could not be deterred. I was so resilient. And that power is what allowed me to move the way I did.
I think that's remarkable because I know so often we're really presented with a choice that we don't even know we're being presented with when you experience a huge loss like that of kind of like lay down and die also, or like invoke this fire within you and then go get it. And and I ponder on that a lot. I don't I don't even necessarily feel like one way is right or wrong, right? Like everyone has their own journey. Because I'm one of those fire people too. And then I've also had to learn to like embrace the other sides of me, the softer sides of me, or the parts of me that still need to grieve and stuff like that. So it's like not one way is not right or wrong, but it's beautiful to see how you were able to utilize that so quickly in such a way that would bring so much fulfillment to your life and so much value to like the world that you are helping through interview connections.
Yeah, and they're definitely not mutually exclusive. I think that like you have to grieve, and the grieving is like constant. And I think a big part of why I was able to do this, it wasn't an energy of like pushing through. It was more an energy of finally facing things. Like I finally faced the mess in the house, and that was very much a metaphor for my own like mental mess that I also was forced to face then. So it wasn't this like really aggressive pushing. I mean, parts of it were, and then I paid for that. But like most of it, the stuff that worked, the stuff that's actually powerful, it was less of a pushing and more of a turning to face things. Like very subtle, kind of peaceful, just looking at what was actually going on. And I think actually having a relationship with reality for the first time in my life of like, this is what is like, and that is what gave me the strength to actually start taking steps. It wasn't the steps themselves or the pushing. It was really, there was so much I didn't want to see about myself and about the world and about my family. And because it was so big, it was this perfect trigger to kind of change the script in a way that I was finally able to look.
That's powerful. That's what I think many of us go our whole lives not doing, right?
Yeah. And it's tempting not to look because the longer you don't look, the more genuine fear there is. Like that it feels like an actual threat to your safety, which is very valid. Like your body wants to keep you alive, your brain wants to keep you alive. As I mentioned, Elizabeth Kristoff, who is an expert in the nervous system, she does a lot about this, and it's powerful stuff, and it's not, your brain's not broken. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. But I think the thing that's so interesting is those oldest things that we feel, it's been so long that we've been avoiding them. We're so sure that they would just destroy us if we could actually see them. They end up being these like little puppy dogs. I mean, they're really not, for the most part, these things about yourself, they're not that bad. They feel so bad to you, but it's so funny when you're not funny, but like when you're coaching someone else and you see their things and it's so heavy to them and terrifying and like, and you see it and you're like, this is not a big deal. Like most people feel insecure in this way. You know what I mean? Like, and then you realize, oh my gosh, this is mirrored for me. These things that I feel like are so big, someone on the outside probably is like, this is okay. Like you faced way bigger stuff than this, but for some reason that's your thing that you've been avoiding.
It's so true. I love that. I love the analogy of like your tigers in the closet, because you have the door all barricaded and you feel like they're clawing from the inside out. And for sure, when you open the door, you're going to be mauled to death. And then you open the door and it's like a kitten. Like I love that. And it's always true. And then what's amazing is like you invoke the strength of a tiger, like for facing the thing. And you're such a great example of that. So Margy, as we wrap up today, I love to ask all of my guests this question as we leave, which is just an opportunity again to see your heart. And the question is, what's a moment in your life where you felt the most fulfilled?
That is such a good question. It's hard to pick just one, but I love these moments. The reason I love hosting We Get It, Your Dad Died is like I love the feedback I get from listeners and stuff, and all of that has been really great. But the actual interview, like that conversation when we get off the call, it's just such a powerful space for healing, and to have another human being really share themselves so vulnerably, and to both create this safe space for their pain in a way that's so healing, and really feel safe to explore the beauty of loss, not just the sadness of it. I think that's some of when I feel most fulfilled. I think it's creating content like that and creating spaces like that where as online entrepreneurs, we're so focused on numbers and like how many downloads, how many likes. But when you create content like that, that just feels so meaningful, that I think is like the most fulfilling thing.
That was hands down my favorite podcast interview I've ever done.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
like,
so
if
glad.
people could just let me talk about my own journey. That feels so true and easy to share. And, gosh, it was just beautiful. So you guys keep an eye out on May 3rd, right?
Mm-hmm.
So next week, keep an eye out for Margy's next pod of podcasts that's going to drop. And I'm so excited to hear the other people who have been interviewed and stuff. Thank you for sharing all of this today. What an inspiration. Like, I hope so many people watch this interview and recognize like the possibility, like talk about business hero's journey. That's like your story. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
Great. Guys, if you haven't already, don't miss an interview of the Chronicles of the High-Powered Female CEO. Go to my website, melisakeenan.com, and you can subscribe there so you'll get an email every time that we do one of these incredible interviews with these incredible women. Thanks again, Margy. Bye, guys.
Thank you.